transmit that document across the network, and even how long it took to render that content on the client machine. So this is very useful in helping to debug particular performance slowdowns or bottlenecks, or maybe you're having trouble with a particular branch or location. This will give you some insight into what's going on and where the time is being taken during some of these key operations. You remember in 8.0 we announced that we've moved our help content out to the internet, so all of that content is now up there for your end users, but also we have enhanced that to include the capture and content store technical guides. Now these are protected, so you'll need to get you a password for that. But at this point, everything except our install guides and our support matrix are up there. So we're hopeful that'll be a little easier for you to access and get into that information. Okay, let's talk about ILINX Capture 8.5. We'll just cover these kind of quickly, but you can read through these yourself. The ones I would draw attention to are the top one there. We've added the ability for redactions on images to change the color. So not just black, you can use white or yellow or whatever. And then a number of other productivity enhancements, and you may recognize some of these. Every one of these are customer enhancement requests, so hopefully you'll see something there that came from your organization. And if you have something that you're wondering about, an enhancement request that you've made, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and we'll get you updated information on if that is included in 8.5, and if not, when you might be looking forward to that. One of the other areas we've enhanced is the upgrade tool and logging what's going on during the upgrade process. We realize that some of you have some very large systems. Some of those things can take a long time, and occasionally we have issues where a server times out or something goes wrong, and that can be concerning. So providing additional logging, helps understand what's going on, what went wrong, and how you can go about fixing it. We've increased the batch name length. We've exposed additional batch fields for database pick lists and lookups, exposed more information that you can use within the AssigneEX IXM to push and pull information into your batch and documents, and just using a point-and-click interface. And then you'll see some of these capabilities as we look into capture at the advanced capture capabilities. We've added some client-side scripting hooks so that you can use some of the same things that we use in the product to draw attention to areas of a document. So maybe you want to implement your own zoom to zone, for instance, for a particular document type. You can do that through the API. Maybe you want to highlight a particular area of the document. You can do that and set the color and opacities and the same types of things that you're going to see when we talk about the advanced capture stuff. All right, so one of the new products that we're introducing for 8.5 is the ILINX Fixed Forms Capture product. Now this is really an evolution of some of the capabilities that we've already had, but it's pretty radical in its evolution here. So what this module is going to allow you to do is to automate the processing of forms or fixed forms or structured content. We'll talk a little bit more exactly what we mean by fixed forms here in just a second, but it's going to allow you to identify particular form pages, so page 1 or 2 or the last page or page 20. You can identify those, and once you can identify the pages, then you can do document separation on those forms. And also, having identified the pages, you can go in and do data extraction. So for the fixed forms capability, you can do alphanumeric, dates, barcodes, and checkboxes. Pull that information out, use those within your workflows. These can include handwriting or machine print as the values that you're looking for. And as you're pulling them out of your content, you can apply vocabularies, database lookups, field templates, so social security number, very common template. Maybe you've got an account number that's number dash and then 4 numbers. And you can specify that as you're setting up these extraction projects to help the system understand what it should be looking for and give you back the best results it can. We also support a number of different languages, including English, of course. And all of this is rolled up and integrated very seamlessly into ILINX Capture, both from the workflow perspective and the end user experience. So what do we mean when we say fixed forms? We're talking about structured content, and that is a document where we understand where the data is exactly on the page and what data type it is. So there's some examples here, a 1040, a W-9, a W-2, maybe some claims forms or HCFA forms. They're going to be very structured, so every form is going to look the same. The locations of that information is going to be the same. Now, we do provide some flexibility there and some dynamic field extraction capabilities as well. So we can go beyond just the pure zonal extraction and even look for keywords and then look in the surrounding vicinity for the particular value that you're looking for, and finding a piece of information that adheres to, in this case, like a social security number, and you can specify that using that template. But in general, we're talking about fixed forms. So one of the components of this product is the ILINX Advanced Capture Studio. So this is a desktop application. We'll go through a quick demo of this after the presentation. And this is available with both the ILINX Fixed Forms Capture product and the updated ILINX Advanced Capture product we'll talk about also. So you can see a screenshot here, and like I said, we'll walk through that. But this is where you will construct your classification projects, your fixed form projects for understanding and identifying the forms, breaking those into documents, and extracting information out of those documents. Also included with ILINX Fixed Forms Capture and ILINX Advanced Capture are some new workflow elements that you can use. The first is a new IXM called the Advanced Capture IXM. This allows you to invoke these fixed forms or advanced capture capabilities at any point in your business process. And the results of that process come back into the workflow environment. You see on the bottom, we can easily use a flow decision to drop that on our workflow, and then we've exposed out of the box some key fields that allow you to control routing based on whether the results coming back from the engine are above or below the confidence that you're looking for that particular document. So this allows you to create, a verification process very, very easily. If you're getting very good results, 80, 90%, 95%, maybe you want to just let those flow on through your business process, but you control that for each of your workflows. For your end users, their experience is going to look very similar. Oh, great. Very similar to what it did in previous releases. You see on this screen, we've got a couple new icons there. So these graphic icons allow us to describe visually what has gone on with the extraction. So it starts off with the little checkbox, and you can hover over each of these icons and get additional information. The checkbox means typically that you exceeded the confidence value that you specified, so probably a good extraction, but you may want to require your users to validate those anyways. The next icon you see has got a checkbox with another little checkbox next to it, which means that the user has tabbed out of that field or hit the enter key to move out of that field, constituting a verification of that value. Also, at the bottom, you see a yellow kind of exclamation mark icon, and that means that that value was lower than what you were expecting for this document type. And it's, the system's going to draw the user's attention right there. And as they move through this index interface that you're familiar with today, on the right-hand side in the viewer, the viewer is going to zoom to the correct page, zoom in to the area, and then you see that area has been highlighted with a color, and you can change the color and you can change the zoom factor as well. But really just to streamline the process of checking each one of those extracted values against the actual document itself. And not all of these values have to be extracted. You may have only a portion of this metadata set that is actually being extracted by the back end. All right, let's move into the ILINX Advanced Capture for 8.5. So you've heard about the ILINX fixed forms for 8.5. ILINX Advanced Capture includes all of those capabilities plus the ability to do automated content classification. So this involves a number of different models that you can employ to do this classification. We've got a content model. This is going to look at the actual text of the page. So basically doing an OCR, looking for keywords and key phrases that you've trained the system to look for. We can also do layout classification. So if you have a form or a document that has maybe a logo, letterhead, maybe it's got some boxes, some type of graphical elements that are recognizable, that could be very useful in identifying the particular document or page. You can also use these in a combined classifier mode where the system will look at both the content and the layout and then choose the one with the highest confidence value. And then if I have some problematic documents, maybe just some very sparsely populated email correspondence or something like that, I can also drop into my rules classifier and manually describe to the engine what it should be looking for this particular document type. Now, we look at that as kind of a contingency plan. That should be the exception, not the rule. And the process of training the system on your content is very, very easy. And we think you'll get some great results without ever having to create any type of classification rules. But know that it's there just in case. And backing up all of these models is a very sophisticated machine learning engine. So I'll show you just briefly in the demo how easy it is to set up the classification rules or the classification training, rather, not the rules. And the machine learning is just that black box that goes on in the background to understand that content and be able to identify, when it sees it again. Also, with the ILINX Advanced Capture 8.5, you get a number of built-in fixed forms. So this includes some HCFA form, some claims forms, UB40s, invoices, checks, various types of receipts, and some other document types as well. So these are just right out of the box. You don't have to configure anything to get the system to understand and extract content from these forms. And of course, this system can do separation, so whether you're doing extraction or not, doesn't matter. You can just do classification and separation. And then within the ILINX Advanced Capture product, we also provide some advanced data extraction capabilities. So here we get into variable table data. This is invoices, a good example of this. You don't know how long or how many rows is going to be in that table. Signatures. We can even compare signatures and, of course, detect the presence of signatures, logos, pull credit card numbers, phone numbers, Social Security numbers. The system has a built-in database of several 100,000 names that it can look at if you tell it this is a name field. Also, we have some scripting extensions. So if you need to do something really fancy with the data, you can drop into some scripting as the engine is processing these pages and make your own decisions and tell the engine what to do, or maybe you need to augment that data as it's passing through. Okay, so we started off with the fixed forms product, and I talked to you about the structured content, the fixed forms, and how it is used to do automated forms recognition and separation, automated field extraction, and then we just covered some of the advanced capture stuff with all of the fixed forms capabilities, plus the semi-structured and unstructured content, and I'll talk to you about what that is here in just a second, automated content layout classification. But I wanted to show you this graphic because at the bottom you see we've got capture with workflow and verification capabilities. We've got the Studio, the Advanced Capture Studio. Those modules or those capabilities are shared between these two products. So it can be a little bit confusing because what I'll be showing you today is the Advanced Capture Studio. but many of the capabilities that I'll be showing today are actually part of the Advanced Capture product, not necessarily part of the ILINX fixed form product. So I hope this graphic kind of helps see what that overlap looks like a little bit. So ILINX Advanced Capture, when we talk about semi-structured and unstructured content, semi-structured are documents where we know what types of data should be present on the document, but we're not exactly sure where they're going to be located. Classic example of semi-structured is an invoice. So we know we should find an invoice number and a date, possibly a PO, depending on what type of invoice, and then a bunch of information about what's actually being purchased, and some money information, totals, subtotals, tax, etc. So we know that information should be there, but it looks very different depending on who you're purchasing from. Other examples might be a title or a bank statement or bills of lading, things that we know should contain certain amounts of information. We just don't know where it is. So the Advanced Capture system is very, very good at allowing you to go in and teach it to understand how to pull information out of those types of documents. The last one is unstructured, and these are probably the most difficult just because they can be anything: email, correspondence, a gift letter, a contract. We suspect there would be information in a particular gift letter, but we have no idea where it would be, and maybe even the type is a little iffy too. So these can be challenging to set up, but the system provides some really nice tools to allow you to classify and then dig in and pull information out if needed. So once this information comes back from the classification engines, whichever one you're using, and you'll see this in the demo, we surface some other graphical information to the users to help them understand immediately what they're looking at. So in this case, you see that there's a new yellow icon plastered on top of the little filing cabinet there, and that's going to indicate to the user that the confidence value for that classification was below what the workflow designer specified. And that's just a configuration value that you can put in each of your workflows. But it just draws attention to the fact that there may be something you want to look at. And if you hover over the icon, you're going to get more information about why the system thinks that should be looked at. So maybe it's a low confidence for a classification. You'll also see this information if that document contains a metadata field that was extracted with a low confidence. And we'll report that there in that little pop-up so you can really quickly see what's going on with that batch. Okay, let's move on now to the ILINX eForms features for 8.5. So we've been busy with this product, and I would encourage you, if you haven't seen it, we did a webinar on this with a demo, I think, for 8.0. Be happy to get together and talk with you, give you a specific demo if you're interested in a particular capabilities or form types. But this is something that we've been putting a lot of energy into, and I think we've really got a very powerful product that's very easy to use, so we're excited to see what you guys are going to do with this. We've added some new widgets into the palette, so now you can put a button on your form, and we've greatly enhanced our extensibility for the eForms and scripting capabilities, so now you can put your own custom scripts behind buttons on the form. We have a label. It just allows you to put a plain piece of text. You can also embed an image into this widget and then style it however you want. We've added a multi-column widget. So this allows me to create more of a horizontal type of layout. Now, you got to be a little careful about this because one of the really powerful features about eForms is that they're very mobile friendly. And if you start creating really wide forms with 6 columns and making it really wide, then the look and the user experience could be degraded. But we do have a lot of customers that want to leverage eForms on like a desktop and to be able to take advantage when appropriate of that real estate. We've also added the ability to hide and show sections of a form, and this also works with the column widgets that I just mentioned, so you can point and click, create logic to hide and show different areas of the form. We've always had the ability to hide and show pages. So a lot of capabilities in streamlining the user experience based on what they have already input into the form. And then we've added a bunch of different productivity enhancements and feedback within the form designer, as well as, you know, cleaning up some of the technology as users have been interacting with the system and giving us some feedback on, that doesn't really make that much sense. We've changed that to make those things a little bit easier to work with. Another one of the things that we've added is the ability to embed pick lists into tables. So if you think of an expense report, one of the things that you typically would do is assign an account to an expense. And so now you can do that. Any of your columns can have a pick list. Of course, in the previous release, we've had text, we've had dates, checkboxes, integers, decimals, and the system enforces those data types. But now we've got pick lists, so we're pretty jazzed about that. I mentioned briefly the enhancements we've made around the extensions for forms. So we've added on submit script handling, on enter and exit fields. So if you're familiar with any of the capture extensibility, client-side scripting capabilities, we've tried to reproduce those as much as possible within the eForms. So there's a very consistent feel. If you're creating extensibility points in capture, you're going to be able to do the same thing within in the eForms. And then exposing some runtime information about the current user as well, and some enhancements around the theming and the ability to handle data input in and out of the eForm. Okay, and then let's cover real quickly the remainder of the suite. ILINX Content Store, we've added some enhancements around cross-application view creation. So if you need to create a view that's going across multiple applications, we've enhanced the capabilities that you have there to do that. I mentioned that performance logging at the very beginning. This is something that's already proven useful on our side for understanding what's going on with a particular system and the performance there. Ability to copy security permissions from one application to a different application. I'm sorry, within an application. So if I set up group XYZ and I want to also enable group 1, 2, 3 with the same security permissions, I can just copy and paste those onto that group. So that speeds up the deployment considerably. And then rounding out the rest of the suite for ILINX Flex, and these are just the key features. By no means this is an exhaustive list. These are just the key ones. In 8.5 for Flex, we've added true enterprise single sign-on using SAML. So if you have a web infrastructure and you want to integrate Flex or eForms, we now have a true, standards-based single sign-on capability. ILINX Export, we've added the ability to execute multiple jobs simultaneously. So this could be helpful if you have a small processing window and you just need to crank more stuff through. This will be helpful. ILINX Import, we've added a Run Now button. So if you've created maybe a job that you only run it once a month, or you run it based on some particular criteria, you can now just go in and punch the Run Now button and it'll just run that import job. So that's kind of handy. And then if you're using import feeding into ILINX Content Store, we've added some advanced features to allow you to look into Content Store, and if you find a document with a specified set of metadata, and you configure that in the wizard, you have several more options now. You can append the inbound content to that document, prepend it, you can check in a new version of that document, or you can create a linked record. So maybe you've got a series of part numbers that apply to a single CAD drawing. I can create multiple records in Content Store, but all of them point to the one single CAD drawing of that part assembly. And I can also do index updates. So I don't even have to check the document in. I can just update the index values and move on. Okay, let me punch out here and go over to my server machine. Before we start the demo, does anyone have any questions? Okay, so what you see on the screen right now is the ILINX Advanced Capture Studio. And if you recall, this desktop application is how I configure both the ILINX Fixed Forms jobs as well as the ILINX Advanced Capture jobs. So what I'm going to show you in this demo, let's just assume I'm showing you the ILINX Advanced Capture product. If you have questions about where we draw the line with capabilities between the fixed form product and the Advanced Capture product, you just ask. But let's assume for this demo that we're looking at the full ILINX Advanced Capture product here, and I have access to all of these capabilities. So on the left-hand side, we've got some navigation elements here, and we're really going to focus on two areas. The classification area, so I mentioned in the presentation we have a number of models you can use to classify and separate documents. And then we're going to jump down into the extraction section. So I can use these two things together, or I can use them both independently. Just depends on what I'm trying to accomplish. So I have the forms definition node selected, and this shows me all of the projects that I have in my Advanced Capture Studio repository. So these are projects that we've set up for varying demonstrations, and I can just click through these, and it's just going to show me the first page of the setup, whatever that is. So I think this one, let's go with this one here. So I've selected this new account opening demo, and if I go select the content classifier, you see the information here in the center changes. The top, I've got a list called the image pool. Those are my sample documents that I'm going to work with and test with. And then I've got my classification set. So this is what I've trained the system on. So training is a very easy thing to do. And actually, it's a probably good time to mention, one of the most challenging and time-consuming parts of setting up a classification project is organizing your documents yourself and maybe separating them into the different types of forms, collecting good sample data, and really getting your head around what your content looks like, because you need to teach the system appropriately, otherwise it's not going to be able to do what you need it to do. So in this case, we've created NOA page 1, page 2, and page 3. Now I didn't have to really do anything. All I did was browse out and add a folder of sample pages for this particular document. And the system brings it in. I hit the train button, and that's really it. Now, in the real world, that process, as I mentioned, of collecting those good samples and structuring your folder correctly. Now, I actually don't have to do that as a folder. I can do it manually here in the user interface. I find it easier to kind of set my documents up manually outside in the file system, just because I can move them around very easily and whatnot. But I can say I want to assign a class and manually go in and pick one of these classes that I've defined for this document type. But that's really all there is to do here. So once I get the system trained, I can hit the test button, and you'll see the confidence values that we're getting out of our train set. A lot of hundreds, some 94s and 96s. So that's pretty good. I could go with that. That's for the content classification. So if you recall, that's where the system is going to OCR this information and actually look at the phrases and words and the text of the document. But I could also use the layout classifier. And if you recall from the presentation, the layout classifier, that's the graphical analysis of the page. So if you took an invoice and held it 20 feet from you, you probably couldn't read any of the information, but you might be able to tell it's an invoice just because of the way the document is laid out, graphics and structure of the document. That's exactly what this system does, is it looks at the layout of the document. So in this case, I could say test again, and it's going to use its train set, and it's going to go evaluate each of my test pages. And in this case, we're hitting 100%. So content classifier was really good. It's got in the mid-90s, upper 90s. But because this is such a structured document, it looks like the layout classifier is actually going to be a little bit more accurate. So I could choose to just use layout going forward, or I could just choose to use the combined classifier, either way. Now I'm not going to really get into the rules classifier, but if I had a particular document that I was just struggling to train the system to identify accurately, I could drop into the rules classifier and create some manual rules to try and improve my accuracy rate there. So that's really it. If I were going to deploy this now, I would just go into Capture Workflow. I'd decide where in my business process I want to invoke my classifier. I'd drop that advanced Capture IXM into the workflow, specify this project, and that's it. I just start feeding content through it. So let's drop now into, well, yeah, let's drop into the registration piece. So that was classification, separation. Here we're dropping down, and the system's been set up to also do extraction. So the first step in setting up extraction is to create registration areas or anchor zones on my documents to help the system orient itself as it's looking for this information. So here I have an anchor zone around this piece of text here. I'm assuming this is not going to change from form to form. Now, if I just bump this, you'll notice this information here that I've tested goes away because now it doesn't know what the results are because I've essentially changed the project. But that's fine. So now I just hit the register button. The system's going to run through all of my sample documents and retest that registration that I've set up. And you see here, if I expand this a little bit, it's going to tell me what it thought each of these images was. So, page 1, well, this is page 0, I guess, page 1, page 2. And so I can click down through these, and I can actually tell just by the naming of these files that, in fact, it's nailing it. It's got them all registered correctly. And that was creating one registration zone per page. So super easy to set up. I can create different registration zones just by adding a new anchor zone and dragging and dropping. It's as easy as that. But we don't really need that because we were getting great results. So let me run the registration again. And the registration, as I mentioned, sets the system up so that it can perform extraction. So I have to run that registration test. Now I can click on fields and go through each of my page templates and decide what information is important that I want to extract. So you see we've put a few fields on here already. We've got a date field. So this is set up as a field type of date. We've got a checkbox. We've got this is just an alphanumeric for our company name. But I can add fields to this page. And you see now on the screen the list of options that I have for extracting fields out of my documents. So we've got the generics across the top, and then as we go down, we get into some advanced stuff. So we've got addresses. We also provide the U.S. Postal Service U.S. address database as an offering for advanced capture so that you can perform address verifications on everything that you're extracting out of your content. And those are refreshed every month, so you're getting the whole database of U.S. addresses that the U.S. Postal System knows about. We also have some fields that are pre-configured, credit card numbers, social security number, that's a very popular one, dollar amounts, check boxes, phone numbers. And then I mentioned in the presentation names. So we have an internal database of several 100,000 names, common names, that we can use as a vocabulary if you tell us you're extracting a full name or a last name or a first name. And so this is just helpful in, if I'm looking at the name Wilson and, the system is a bad scan and I can't really tell if it's an L or a 1. Well, if I know it's a name, I can look in that database and Wilson's going to be one of the names, and that's going to increase my confidence over assuming that is a 1. We can also do signatures, and I mentioned there's a couple different things we can do with this. We can look for signatures, so just making sure somebody signed a document. We can also do signature comparisons. So if you wanted to create, for instance, a bank creates a signature card, we can compare a signature on a document to a database of signatures and give you a confidence value that it is, in fact, the matching signature or not. We can also look for presence of logos and handwriting, initials on a page, maybe a contract, or handwriting. Maybe somebody's supposed to write paid on the top of an invoice, and we can look for those pieces of information. Now, once I put a field on my form, you see on the right-hand side, I've got a ton of other things that I can go tune and tweak. Things like removing lines. So in this case, we do have some lines here. This is a pretty narrow box, actually. So if I were doing handwriting recognition, I'd probably want to turn on, the removal of some of those lines because most people aren't going to be able to write small enough to get in there. And so we want to eliminate those lines so they don't mess up our recognition. I can remove noise, too, if this is a particularly noisy scan or document that I'm expecting to come in. And then we can change the field type, and this is the list that you saw up there on the menu. I can just change that here. I can set a language, and then I can tell the system what to expect. So is this going to be a machine print, hand print, or I could set it to auto-detect if it could be a mix of either one of those. I've got some other performance settings here. This is a date, so I get to specify a date format that I'm looking for, whether I'm using 2-digit years, etc. The other thing that I can do, and let me pick this business name. So with a alpha or an alphanumeric, I can also employ vocabularies. This might be something that I can specify just directly right here in the studio. So like maybe if I'm doing DMV processing, it's the list of 100 or so car manufacturers. And I can just put that right here in the system, and then the system will employ that vocabulary as it's looking at my car manufacturer field for my registration document. Or I can go out to a line of business system database. So point and click, I can configure a database lookup. So I can look at my master supplier list, and I can try to verify a supplier name or a constituent name or a customer ID or account number or whatever it is. And doing that allows me to increase that confidence. So if the system is having trouble discerning between an L and a 1 and it finds a match where the value is actually a 1, that's the one it's going to pick and return to you. So as part of the process of laying out my extraction fields here, I can click on this recognition node, and this is going to allow me to test against my layout. Now let me go pick a different project because I think this looks like it's using all the same documents. That's not very interesting. Let's check this one out. Okay, now let's go into the fields. It should be more interesting. Okay. So if I click the recognition, it's going to go down through each of my sample documents for whatever field I have highlighted here, and it's going to perform the actual extraction and then tell me what the results were and tell me what the confidence level was. And so this is just a great interface that allows me to quickly, and I can click on each of these and it'll actually load up that particular image, and I could have a dozen or 2 dozen of these test images, and it's going to show me what these results are. So here we're getting 100 confidence factor, which is the highest you can get. So we're pretty sure these are the right numbers. Now, if we go down here to names, we might see a little variation, and we are. And again, this is looking against our internal name database. So here we've got an 86. Not so confident about that kind of odd name, but it did get it right. Good confidence there for John. 100% there for Zach, 99 for Rosemary. So I can use this tool to see what my setup is going to currently do against my sample set of information. And I can get really geeky down here and look into the individual characters that it's pulling out, and I can expand this if I'm wondering, why did it think this was a whatever? And I can get down here and look at the individual character extractions so I can really understand, what's causing a problem, and then go in here. Maybe I'm getting a lot of noise in this particular field, something on the scanner maybe. So I can do some noise removal there. But just a really nice closed-loop system to allow me to add fields and quickly test them right in this environment. And then once I'm happy with this, then I just go into my capture workflow, add that advanced capture IXM, point at this project, and start pumping information through. And I'll show you what that looks like here in just a second. Just briefly, I mentioned in the presentation that, if I had to do some very strange or sophisticated verification of information, I can drop into the scripting environment here, and I can create some, some C# extensions into the product to allow me to go out to to an external system. And I can compile this and run this and test this right in this environment. So it's a super easy way to extend the system. And then we have some other capabilities down here that I'll leave to you to read about that are pretty cool as well. Any questions before we hop over to capture? Okay. So hopefully you're all familiar with the capture interface. I'm going to pop over here to the assigned work. This is the new account open. So this is running that, actually I'm not sure which one of those that we saw, but it's running one of those projects. And so I would just go to, capture, pull these off the scanner, drop them in, capture. I don't classify them as a particular document. I just leave them as loose pages, submit them into this workflow. And the workflow itself is going to use the classification capabilities and the extraction capabilities to tell me what this information is. Now, when I clicked on that batch just now, if you look on this interface, we're actually sitting on document 5, and we're here focused in on this particular field. Let me go back here and download these documents so you can see what I'm logged in as an admin, so it doesn't automatically do that. But what has happened is the system looked at this batch. It sees that there are some potential issues where we have some low confidence values, and it is automatically taken me down to this last document in the batch and put my cursor on the first field that is low confidence. And so you see as I click around here, the viewer is going to zoom me, move me around, highlight that extraction area. And so if I look closely here, I do see that it thought the I in this company name was a 1. So it did, in fact, get that wrong. So if we hover over here, we see low confidence extracted value, 5% is pretty low. So it's definitely going to flag that one to have someone look at it. So if I come in here and change this to the I that it should be, now watch the little icon over there when I move off of that field. So now it's marked with a green check with a little sub-check, and if I hover over now, it's going to tell me that that piece of information was corrected and verified by me. I'm the admin on that date and time. This one was a good extraction, so if I just move on, it marks that one as just simply verified. So this is important because I can make a distinction between which of my fields actually get corrected and which ones of them were verified without correction. So that field, maybe it got a 5% confidence, but it actually had extracted it correctly. I could just move off of that, and it wouldn't have marked it as corrected. It would just mark it as verified. So that information allows me to look at the performance of my extraction and make adjustments if necessary. So if I have a field that is constantly needing user correction, then I'm probably going to need to go back into the studio and do some tweaking on that, maybe grab some samples that are not, being extracted correctly, and remove some noise, remove some lines, do some auto adjusting on the extraction area so that I can get that confidence value up and get those extractions working better so I don't have to have my users touch, these documents. So all of this is keyboard enabled. I don't have to touch my mouse to do any of this. I can just zip through these documents very quickly and move them on in the workflow. So let me just briefly show you this workflow. It's very simple. And we touched on this throughout the presentation today. Now, can't get much simpler than this. This is the new Advanced Capture IXM. And in terms of configuration, there really isn't anything aside from specifying the project that you want to run. So this isn't an exciting workflow, but you could imagine if I had prep work to do, if I wanted a mailroom to collect this, but then route it somewhere for somebody to take a preliminary look at, I don't have to run the advanced capture stuff right off the bat. I could route it through any amount of workflow before it actually hits that advanced capture step and performs those operations. We also have some new settings in here. One of them here is this can verify. So I can actually determine which of my human activities I want to enable that verification to take place in. If I am a user and I don't have access to that security setting, when I look at a batch, it's going to look exactly like it did in previous releases. I won't see the icons. I won't have that information surface to me about the extraction confidence. And as I click through, it's not going to move around and highlight those extraction areas on the document. So it just allows you to control that user experience, where and when you want that verification to occur, and who you want to do that work. Okay, I think that's about it. We're getting close to the top of the hour. Any questions on this? Okay, everybody.
Well, if anyone has questions, please feel free to email Randy or call him. Call ImageSource and we'll get you connected. Also, I would encourage you to get on the LinkedIn interface and have conversations amongst yourselves. And I want, also, we would love to have more people be part of the user group. So if you know anyone that would benefit from or enjoy being part of it, please encourage your colleagues to join. They just search for it on LinkedIn, request to join, and then I manage the group so I can approve them if they actually are an ILINX user and they can be part of it in the future. Thanks for attending. Have a great day.
Thank you.